The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with the voices of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Tejo sat in the small human section, feeling very alone among the massive delegates around him. The Vorthak representatives towered over everyone else with their thick green scales and yellow eyes. The insect-like Chitauri clicked their mandibles in constant chatter. Even the peaceful Etherians glowed with soft blue light that made them seem important and wise. Tejo adjusted his simple black suit and looked at the data pad in his hands. Earth needed military-grade fusion technology. Their current power systems were outdated compared to what other species used. Without better technology, humanity would always be stuck on the edges of galactic society. The Galactic Council chamber was built to impress. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Each species had their own section with seats designed for their body types. The humans got 20 seats in a corner, while major powers like the Vorthak Empire had entire sections that could hold thousands. Chancellor Velkoth of the Vorthak stood up to speak. His voice boomed across the hall without any amplification. Today we discuss the request from the human species for access to fusion technology classified as military grade. Tejo felt his heart beat faster. This was the moment Earth had been waiting for. 6 months of preparation had led to this single request. The humans claim they need this technology for peaceful energy production, Chancellor Velkoth continued. His massive head turned toward the human section. However, our intelligence reports show that humans are still fighting wars among themselves. They cannot even achieve peace on their own world. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Tejo knew this argument was coming, but it still stung. Earth had indeed seen conflicts in recent years, but nothing compared to the massive wars that other species had fought. Furthermore, the Chancellor said, his voice growing louder, humans have only been in space for less than 200 of their years. They are essentially barely evolved primates who have learned to use tools. Giving them advanced fusion technology would be like giving fire to children. Laughter erupted from several sections. The Chitauri delegates clicked their approval. Even some of the usually quiet Etherians seemed to glow brighter with amusement. Tejo felt his face turn red, but he forced himself to stay calm. He stood up slowly and activated his section's speaking system. Honorable Chancellor, with respect, humanity has made remarkable progress in a short time. We have colonized 17 worlds and established peaceful trade with dozens of species. Our request for fusion technology is solely for civilian use. Chancellor Velkoth's yellow eyes fixed on Tejo like a predator studying prey. Ambassador, your species has impressed no one with your remarkable progress. Your ships are slow and primitive. Your weapons are chemical-based projectiles that any decent shield can stop. Your colonies barely sustain themselves and require constant supply runs from your homeworld. The Chancellor walked down from his platform, his heavy footsteps echoing in the chamber. Most importantly, humans have contributed nothing to galactic civilization. No new technologies, no scientific breakthroughs, no cultural achievements worth noting. You are asking for advanced technology while offering nothing in return. Tejo opened his mouth to respond, but Chancellor Velkoth held up a massive clawed hand. The Galactic Council has already made its decision. Humanity's request for military-grade fusion technology is denied. Furthermore, all trade agreements with Earth will be reviewed and likely restricted until your species demonstrates that it can achieve basic planetary unity. The chamber erupted in approving sounds from most species. A few of the smaller delegations looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up for humanity. Tejo sat down slowly, feeling the weight of failure settling on his shoulders. As the session moved on to other business, Tejo barely listened. His mind was already composing the message he would have to send back to Earth. President Ji-won would not be happy. The military leaders would be furious. Admiral So-min had specifically warned that this might happen. Hours later, as delegates filed out of the chamber, Tejo remained in his seat. The Etherian delegate from a nearby section approached him. Her blue glow was softer now, almost sympathetic. Ambassador Tejo, she said in her musical voice, I am sorry about today's decision. Some of us believe the Chancellor was unnecessarily harsh. Tejo looked up at her. Thank you, Ambassador Lyra, though I suspect being sorry will not change anything. Perhaps not, she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. But you should know that many species are watching humanity with interest. Your rapid expansion into space, your adaptability, Your persistence in the face of setbacks. These are not common traits. Apparently they are not enough either, Tejo replied. Ambassador Lyra was quiet for a moment. The Chancellor fears what he does not understand. Humans are different from other species in ways that make him uncomfortable. Be patient, Ambassador. Time has a way of revealing truth. After she left, Tejo finally stood up and walked toward the exit. His communicator buzzed with an incoming message. He expected it to be from Earth asking for updates. Instead, the message was from Admiral Somin, and it contained only a few words. The Indomitable is ready. Meanwhile, far beyond the orbit of Neptune, Admiral Somin stood on an observation deck looking out at humanity's greatest secret. The Titan shipyard stretched across space like a small city. Hundreds of construction vessels moved between massive framework structures, but all of that was just background to the ship floating in the center of it all. The Indomitable was beautiful in the way that only human engineering could be. Unlike the organic curves favored by most alien species, or the geometric patterns preferred by others, the human ship looked like it was built for war. Its hull was a dark gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship stretched over 2 kilometers from bow to stern, but somehow did not look bulky or slow. Captain Dae Sung joined the Admiral on the observation deck. He was young for a ship captain, only 35 years old, but he had trained for this command his entire career. His dark hair was cut short in military style, and his eyes held the sharp focus of someone who understood the weight of responsibility. Final systems check completed an hour ago. Dae Sung reported. All departments report ready for operational status. Admiral Somin nodded without taking her eyes off the ship. She was older, in her 60s, with gray streaking through her black hair. She had overseen the Indomitable project from the very beginning, 15 years ago when it was just an idea on paper. The council meeting? She asked. Ambassador Tejo sent the expected result, Dae Sung replied. They denied our request and threatened trade restrictions. Good, Admiral Somin said, surprising the captain. If they had agreed to give us fusion technology, we might have been tempted to abandon the project. Now we know exactly where humanity stands in their eyes. She turned to face Dae Sung directly. Captain, in 2 days you will take the Indomitable on its first operational mission. Are you ready? Dae Sung stood straighter. Yes, Admiral. The crew is ready as well. Tell me about them. Chief Engineer Yunbi has worked on every system aboard the ship. She knows the Indomitable better than anyone except maybe you. Navigator Wu Jin can plot courses through fold space that other species think are impossible. Weapons Officer Haya Jin has trained on the gravity cannon system for 3 years. Admiral Somin smiled slightly. And Medical Officer Sung Ho? He has been studying alien biology for the past decade. If we encounter wounded enemies, he will be able to treat them according to galactic medical protocols. Wounded enemies? Admiral Somin raised an eyebrow. Captain Dae Sung looked uncomfortable. Admiral, the gravity cannon. If we fire it at full power, there will be no wounded enemies, Admiral Somin finished. I know, Captain. The weapon is designed to send a message, not to take prisoners. She walked closer to the observation window. The Indomitable hung in space like a sleeping giant, its hull studded with weapon systems and sensor arrays that no other species had ever seen. 15 years ago, when humanity first made contact with galactic civilization, I was just a young officer on a patrol ship. I watched alien vessels that could travel between stars in days while our fastest ships took months. I saw weapons that could destroy asteroids with single shots while our missiles barely scratched their hulls. Admiral Somin paused, remembering. I made a promise that day. Humanity would never again be helpless in the face of superior technology. We would either earn respect through achievement or take it through strength. Captain Dae Sung joined her at the window. The other species will not expect this level of advancement from us. No, they will not. They think humans are primitive and predictable. They believe our technology is centuries behind theirs. They assume that we will always be dependent on their approval for advancement. Admiral Somin turned to leave the observation deck. Captain, tomorrow you will meet with your senior staff for final mission briefings. The day after that, you will take the Indomitable into fold space and change the balance of power in this galaxy forever. As she walked away, Captain Dae Sung remained at the window. He thought about the crew members who would serve under his command. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council's rejection of humanity's request. The sting of that humiliation still burned in the minds of Earth's leaders. but they had more immediate problems to worry about. Reports were coming in from the outer colonies, and none of them were good. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Seoul, watching his tactical display with growing concern. Red dots representing unknown vessels were moving through the Kepler system in coordinated patterns. These were not random pirates looking for easy targets. This was a planned military operation. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving distress signals from the mining station on Kepler 442c. They report ships attacking the orbital platforms." Hyunwoo gritted his teeth. The mining station supported 3,000 families. It was one of humanity's most successful outer rim colonies, producing rare metals that Earth desperately needed for ship construction. "Signal the defense fleet," he ordered. "All available ships are to converge on Kepler 442c immediately." The response was not what he wanted to hear. "Sir, we only have 6 patrol ships in the system. The attackers are showing at least 20 vessels on long-range sensors. 20 ships against 6. The mathematics of the situation were clear and depressing. Human patrol ships were fast and maneuverable, but they were not designed for major fleet battles. Their weapons were kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams that could barely scratch the hulls of modern military vessels. "Do it anyway," Hyunwoo said. "We cannot abandon the colonists." As the New Seoul changed course toward the mining station, Hyunwoo opened a secure channel to Earth Command. The message would take hours to reach home due to the distance, but Admiral So-min needed to know what was happening. "Earth Command, this is Commander Hyunwoo aboard New Seoul. We are under attack by unknown forces in the Kepler system. Enemy ships appear to be Cortex design, but they are operating in coordinated battle groups. This is not a random pirate raid. Requesting immediate military assistance." The Cortex Empire was one of the more aggressive species in the galaxy. They controlled several dozen star systems and were known for their powerful military fleets. If the Cortex were behind these attacks, it meant that humanity was facing a serious threat. On the planet's surface, colonist families were evacuating to underground shelters. The mining operation had been shut down, and all personnel were either fleeing or preparing to defend their homes. The orbital platforms were already burning, their metal frameworks twisting and melting under enemy fire. In space above, the human defense fleet arrived just in time to see the mining station's final moments. The massive structure broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the darkness. 20 Cortex raiders hung in formation nearby, their weapons still glowing from the destruction they had caused. "This is Captain Lee aboard HSF Determination," came a voice over the fleet communications. "All ships engage enemy forces. Protect the evacuation transports." The battle was brief and brutal. Human ships darted between the larger Cortex vessels, firing everything they had. Their missiles and energy beams struck enemy shields and scattered harmlessly. The Cortex response was overwhelming. Plasma cannons and particle beams cut through human ships like they were made of paper. Within minutes, 4 of the 6 human ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 2 were forced to retreat, unable to even slow down the enemy advance. Commander Hyunwoo watched from a safe distance as the Cortex fleet finished destroying the orbital infrastructure and then jumped away into fold space. The message was clear. Humanity's defenses were useless against modern military technology. Back on Earth, President Ji-won sat in the emergency conference room deep beneath the capital city. The room was filled with military leaders, intelligence officials, and scientific advisors. The holographic display in the center showed the Kepler system and the extent of the damage. "Casualty report," she asked quietly. General Park, the head of Earth's military forces, consulted his datapad. 4,700 dead or missing. The mining station was completely destroyed. 3 colony ships were damaged but manageable. 4 patrol ships lost with all hands. The room was silent for a moment. President Ji-won was a small woman with graying hair, but her voice carried absolute authority when she spoke. "Intelligence assessment. Was this a random attack or something more?" Intelligence Director Kim stepped forward. "Madam President, the attack patterns suggest military training and coordination. The ships were definitely Cortex design, but they were operating far from Cortex territory. Someone is using them as a proxy force. To what end? To test our defenses, to see how we respond to a major threat, to gauge whether humanity is worth conquering or simply destroying." President Ji-won turned to Admiral So-min, who had been sitting quietly at the far end of the table. Admiral, what is the status of our special project? Admiral Somin stood up slowly. Madam President, the Indomitable is fully operational. Captain Dae-sung and his crew have completed all training exercises. The ship is ready for deployment. And the other projects? The Unconquerable is 80% complete. The Unstoppable is at 60%. If we reveal the Indomitable now, we lose the element of surprise for the entire fleet. President Ji-won was quiet for a long moment, considering the options. Around the table, the military leaders waited for her decision. Everyone knew that this moment would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. How many more colonies can we afford to lose while we wait for the other ships to be completed? She asked. General Park answered immediately. None, Madam President. Our outer rim defenses cannot stop another attack like this one. If the enemy decides to launch a full assault, we could lose a dozen colonies before our conventional forces could respond. Then we have our answer. President Ji-won turned back to Admiral So-min. Deploy the Indomitable. Show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. Admiral So-min nodded. Yes, Madam President. I will contact Captain Dae-sung immediately. In the Titan shipyards, Captain Dae-sung was reviewing battle reports with his senior staff when the order came through. The conference room aboard the Indomitable was smaller than the one on Earth, but it was equipped with the most advanced communication systems in human space. The attack on Kepler 442c was not random, Captain Dae-sung told his officers. Intelligence believes it was a test of our defenses. More attacks are likely to follow. Chief Engineer Yoonbi looked up from her technical reports. Captain, the gravity cannon is fully charged and ready. All ship systems are operating at peak efficiency. Navigator Woo Jin was studying star charts on his portable display. Sir, the quickest route to the Kepler system is through the Vega corridor. We can reach the area in 18 hours using fold space. Weapons Officer Hee Jin had been quiet during the briefing, but now she spoke up. Captain, what are our rules of engagement? Are we authorized to use maximum force? Captain Dae-sung considered the question carefully. The gravity cannon was not a weapon designed for warning shots or limited engagement. When fired at full power, it would completely destroy any target within its range. Our primary mission is to protect human colonies and citizens, he said finally. If enemy forces threaten civilian lives, we are authorized to use any means necessary to stop them. Medical Officer Sung-ho raised his hand. Sir, what about prisoners? If we disable enemy ships, are we prepared to take survivors aboard? Doctor, if we fire the gravity cannon at an enemy ship, there will be no survivors to take prisoner. The weapon does not disable targets. It destroys them completely. The room fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. The crew of the Indomitable had trained extensively with the ship's weapon systems, but this would be their first time using them in actual combat. Communications Officer Soo Jin broke the silence. Captain, we're receiving final departure clearance from Admiral So-min. The shipyard control systems are transferring full command authority to you. Captain Dae-sung stood up from his chair. Very well. All departments prepare for departure. We launch in 1 hour. As his officers left to prepare their departments, Captain Dae-sung remained in the conference room alone. He thought about the weight of command and the responsibility he was about to accept. The Indomitable was more than just a ship. It was humanity's statement to the galaxy that they would no longer accept being treated as inferior. An hour later, the massive ship slowly moved away from the Titan shipyards. Its fold space drive activated with a flash of blue light, and the Indomitable disappeared from normal space. The journey to the Kepler system had begun. In the Korthax Empire, War Marshal Grixtor received reports of the successful raid on human colonies. He was a massive warrior, even by Korthax standards, with scars covering his armored hide from decades of battles. His species respected strength above all else, and humans had shown nothing but weakness. The human defenses were pathetic, reported Captain Vexhan, who had led the raid. Their ships are slow and their weapons are primitive. We destroyed their orbital platforms and 4 of their patrol ships without taking any damage. War Marshal Grixtor studied the tactical reports on his command display. The humans had responded exactly as predicted. Their ships were outnumbered and outgunned, and they had been forced to retreat. The Haven system was dying. Admiral Veltar of the Korthax Navy watched from the bridge of his flagship as his fleet systematically destroyed everything humans had built in this corner of space. Orbital defense platforms crumbled under concentrated plasma fire. Space stations broke apart in brilliant explosions. Even the communication satellites were being hunted down and destroyed one by one. Haven was humanity's largest colony outside of the Sol system. Over 2 million people lived on the planet's surface and another 500,000 worked in the orbital facilities. It was supposed to be the crown jewel of human expansion into the galaxy. Now it was about to become a monument to human weakness. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "All orbital defenses have been neutralized. The planet is defenseless." Admiral Veltar nodded with satisfaction. The operation had taken less than 4 hours. 200 Cortex ships had swept through the system like a storm, brushing aside the pathetic human defenses without breaking formation. A few human patrol ships had tried to fight back, but they had been destroyed so quickly that they barely registered as a threat. "Open a channel to the planet," Admiral Veltar ordered. "It is time to offer terms." The main screen showed the blue and green world of Haven hanging in space below them. City lights were visible on the night side, representing millions of human lives that were now completely at his mercy. Admiral Veltar had conquered dozens of worlds in his career, but this one felt different. Humans were not warriors like his own species. They were soft creatures who built rather than conquered. "Citizens of Haven," he broadcast to the planet, "this is Admiral Veltar of the Cortex Imperial Navy. Your orbital defenses have been destroyed. Your fleet has been scattered. You are completely defenseless." He paused, letting the words sink in. "However, the Cortex Empire is not without mercy. Surrender immediately and your lives will be spared. You will become subjects of the Empire, but you will live. Resist and we will burn your world from orbit." The response from the planet came quickly. Governor Chen Ho, the human leader of Haven, appeared on the screen. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him, emergency lights flashed as his staff worked frantically at their stations. "Admiral Veltar," Governor Chen Ho said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Haven is a civilian colony with no military value. We have families here, children. Why are you doing this?" Admiral Veltar found the question amusing. "Your species needs to learn its place in the galaxy. Humans have been allowed to expand too freely, to believe that you are equal to your betters. This lesson will be remembered for generations. And if we surrender, what guarantee do we have that you will honor your word? You have my word as a Cortex officer. Your people will be relocated to work camps where they can serve the Empire in useful ways. It is more than your species deserves." Governor Chen Ho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, Admiral Veltar could see the defeat in them. "I need time to consult with the Colonial Council." "You have 1 hour," Admiral Veltar replied, cutting the transmission. He turned to his tactical officer. "Begin preparations for orbital bombardment. If they refuse to surrender, I want to be able to glass the planet within minutes." The Cortex fleet moved into bombardment formation. Massive dreadnoughts positioned themselves over major population centers while smaller ships spread out to cover the entire planet. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city, and together they could turn the planet's surface into molten rock. Admiral Veltar had conducted orbital bombardments before. It was not his preferred method of conquest, but sometimes examples needed to be made. The destruction of Haven would send a clear message to every other human colony: surrender immediately, or face complete annihilation. 57 minutes into the hour-long ultimatum, space itself seemed to tear open. The distortion appeared directly between the Cortex fleet and the planet Haven. Reality, twisted and bent as something massive, forced its way through fold space in a way that should have been impossible. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in the system as the unknown vessel completed its emergency translation. When the distortion cleared, Admiral Veltar found himself staring at something that made no sense. The ship was enormous, larger than his own flagship, larger than any vessel he had ever seen. Its hull was a dark gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was unlike anything in the galactic databases, with sharp angles and aggressive lines that spoke of pure military purpose. "Tactical report," Admiral Veltar demanded. His officer struggled with his instruments. "Sir, the ship is over 2 kilometers long. Mass readings are impossible. Our sensors cannot determine its weapon systems or defensive capabilities." "What species built it?" "Unknown, sir. The design does not match any known technology." Admiral Veltar studied the massive vessel with growing unease. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like it. The ship hung motionless in space, its presence somehow making his entire fleet seem small and insignificant. "Sir?" his communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional, speaking in perfectly clear galactic standard. "This is Captain Dae-sung of the Earth vessel Indomitable. You have attacked human civilians. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Veltar felt a moment of confusion. Earth vessel? Humans did not have ships like this. Their technology was primitive, their fleet was weak. This had to be some kind of mistake. "Unknown vessel," he responded. "You are interfering with a lawful military operation. Identify yourself properly and withdraw, or you will be fired upon." "I have identified myself, Admiral. I am Captain Dae-sung, commanding officer of the Indomitable, flagship of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have 1 minute to begin withdrawal from this system." The audacity of it was stunning. A single ship, regardless of size, was demanding that an entire Cortex battle fleet retreat. Admiral Veltar had 200 ships under his command. Even if this mysterious vessel was more advanced than it appeared, numbers would eventually tell. "Captain Dae-sung," Admiral Veltar said, letting contempt color his voice, "you are outnumbered 200 to 1. Your species is known for its weakness and primitive technology. Surrender now, and I will allow you to witness the conquest of this world before I destroy your ship." The response came without hesitation. "Admiral Veltar, you have been warned. All ships prepare for battle." Admiral Veltar laughed. "Fire on that ship. All vessels concentrate fire on the human vessel. Destroy it." The order rippled through the Cortex fleet. 200 ships turned their weapons toward the lone human vessel. Plasma cannons charged to full power. Particle beam arrays locked onto their target. Quantum torpedo launchers prepared to fire. The amount of firepower aimed at the Indomitable was enough to destroy a small moon. When Admiral Veltar gave the final order to fire, the space between his fleet and the human ship lit up like a star as thousands of weapons discharged simultaneously. The weapons struck the Indomitable's position and kept firing for 30 seconds. The space around the human ship became a storm of energy and destruction that would have vaporized any known vessel. When the firing finally stopped, Admiral Veltar expected to see nothing but debris and scattered atoms. Instead, the Indomitable hung in space exactly where it had been before. Its hull showed no damage. Its shields, if it even had shields, showed no signs of stress. The massive ship had absorbed the combined firepower of an entire battle fleet without taking so much as a scratch. "Impossible," Admiral Veltar whispered. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Dae-sung watched his tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The quantum armor had performed exactly as designed. The enemy weapons had struck with tremendous force, but the armor had absorbed and dispersed the energy harmlessly. "Damage report," he called out. "No damage to any system," Chief Engineer Yoonbi reported from her station. "Quantum armor integrity at 100%. All weapon systems charged and ready." Captain Dae-sung stood up from his command chair. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency at their stations. They had trained for this moment for years, and now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity could accomplish. "Target the lead dreadnought," he ordered. "Gravity cannon, full power." Weapons Officer Hyejin's hands moved across her controls with practiced precision. Gravity cannon charged and locked on target. "Ready to fire on your command, Captain." Captain Dae-sung thought about the thousands of humans on the planet below, the families hiding in shelters while an alien fleet threatened to destroy their world. He thought about the mining station that had been destroyed months ago, and all the other human colonies that lived in fear of attack by superior forces. Fire. The gravity cannon fired with no visible beam, no flash of light, no dramatic energy discharge. There was simply a brief distortion in space. A moment when reality seemed to bend and twist around the target. Admiral Veltar's flagship, a massive dreadnought that had conquered a dozen worlds, suddenly began to compress. The ship's hull buckled inward as gravity forces beyond comprehension crushed it from all directions. Metal that could withstand plasma fire crumpled like paper. The news of the Haven System incident spread across the galaxy, faster than any ship could travel. Quantum communication networks carried the impossible story from world to world. A single human vessel had destroyed an entire Cortex battle fleet with one shot. Within hours, every major government, military organization, and intelligence agency in galactic space was scrambling to understand what had happened. Security Chief Min Ho aboard the Indomitable monitored the flood of communications with growing interest. His station on the bridge was equipped with the most advanced signal interception technology that human science could produce, much of it based on alien designs that had been reverse-engineered and improved upon. "Captain," he reported to Daesung, "we're picking up massive increases in encrypted traffic throughout the galaxy. Emergency sessions being called, military alerts being issued, diplomatic channels working overtime." Captain Daesung nodded from his command chair. The Indomitable was currently in fold space, making its way back toward Earth at a leisurely pace. There was no rush now. The message had been sent and the galaxy was responding exactly as expected. "Any specific reactions worth noting?" Daesung asked. Minho consulted his displays. "The Vorthak Empire has placed all border fleets on high alert. The Chitauri Confederation is requesting emergency meetings with their allies. The Etherian Commonwealth has issued a formal statement calling for calm and rational discussion. And the Cortex? Total communication blackout from their core systems, but we're detecting massive fleet movements toward their outer territories. They're pulling ships back from everywhere." Captain Daesung allowed himself a small smile. The Cortex Empire had built its reputation on military strength and aggressive expansion. Now they were retreating to defensive positions because of a single human ship. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical destruction. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session for the second time in 3 months. The great chamber that had been filled with confident voices dismissing humanity now buzzed with uncertainty and fear. Chancellor Velkoth sat in his massive chair, trying to project calm authority while his mind raced through the implications of what he had learned. Ambassador Teho sat in the human section, no longer alone and ignored. Representatives from a dozen species had approached him privately, asking for meetings and offering various forms of cooperation. The change in attitude was remarkable and completely predictable. "The reports are confirmed," announced Intelligence Director Zexmai, a tall insectoid creature whose species specialized in information gathering. "A single human vessel, designation unknown, did indeed destroy the Cortex flagship Dominion with what appears to be a gravitational weapon of unprecedented power." Murmurs filled the chamber. Gravitational weapons were theoretical concepts that most species had abandoned as impractical. The energy requirements were enormous, the engineering challenges were nearly impossible, and the risks of catastrophic failure were too high to accept. Furthermore, Zexmai continued, the human vessel absorbed the concentrated fire of over 200 Cortex ships without apparent damage. Whatever defensive technology they have developed is equally advanced. Chancellor Velkoth stood up slowly. His yellow eyes scanned the chamber, noting which species looked frightened and which looked calculating. "Ambassador Teho, perhaps you would care to explain how your primitive species has suddenly developed technology that surpasses anything in galactic civilization?" Teho rose from his seat with dignity. 3 months ago, he had been dismissed and humiliated in the same chamber. Now every eye was focused on him with respect and more than a little fear. "Honorable Chancellor," Teho said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "humanity has never claimed to be primitive. That assumption was made by others based on incomplete information. You requested fusion technology from us," Chancellor Velkoth replied. "Your ships were known to be inferior to ours. Your weapons were chemical projectiles. We requested technology that we needed for civilian purposes," Teho corrected. "We never claimed that our military capabilities were limited to what you had observed." The chamber erupted in voices as representatives from different species began arguing among themselves. Some demanded that humanity share their new technology. Others suggested that the human ship represented a threat that needed to be contained. A few called for immediate diplomatic recognition of humanity as a major galactic power. Chancellor Velkoth raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Teho, the Galactic Council demands full disclosure of human military capabilities. The weapon demonstrated at Haven represents a potential threat to galactic stability." Teho smiled politely. "Honorable Chancellor, with respect, humanity is under no obligation to disclose military secrets to the Galactic Council. The Charter of Galactic Governance specifically protects the right of member species to maintain defensive capabilities. The weapon used at Haven was hardly defensive. The Cortex fleet was attacking a human colony with 2 million civilians. The Indomitable responded to protect those civilians from unprovoked aggression. How is that not defensive? The logic was unassailable, and Chancellor Velkoth knew it. Worse, he was beginning to realize that humanity had played a much longer game than anyone had suspected. While the galaxy had dismissed them as primitive, humans had been secretly developing technology that changed everything. In the Cortex Empire, War Marshal Grixtor received the surviving ships from the Haven disaster with barely controlled rage. Fewer than 50 vessels had returned from a fleet of 200. The survivors' reports were consistent but unbelievable. "You are telling me," Grixtor said to Captain Vexhan, "that a single human ship destroyed Admiral Veltar's flagship with one shot?" Captain Vexhan was one of the few senior officers to survive the battle. His ship had been among the first to flee when the Dominion was destroyed. "War Marshal, I saw it with my own eyes. The human weapon compressed the flagship into a point and then released the energy. There was nothing left but expanding plasma. And our weapons had no effect on this ship? None whatsoever. We concentrated the fire of the entire fleet on the human vessel. It absorbed everything without taking damage." Grixtor paced around his command chamber like a caged predator. The Cortex Empire had built its power on military superiority. Their ships were among the most advanced in the galaxy. Their weapons were feared throughout known space. The idea that humans had surpassed them was almost impossible to accept. "How many ships do the humans have like this?" he asked, "Unknown War Marshal." "We only encountered one vessel, but..." Captain Vexhan hesitated. "Sir, the human captain spoke as if his ship was part of a larger fleet. He called it the flagship of the Earth Defense Fleet. That implies there are others. The implications were terrifying. If humans had built multiple ships with this kind of capability, they could challenge any power in the galaxy. The careful balance that had existed for centuries could be shattered overnight. What are our intelligence reports on human shipbuilding capabilities?" Grixtor demanded. His intelligence chief consulted his databanks. "Sir, our information is apparently outdated. We believed humans had only basic shipyard facilities in their home system. But to build a vessel of this size and capability would require massive industrial infrastructure. Then find out what we missed. I want to know everything about human military production. I want to know how many ships they have, where they are built, and what other surprises they might be hiding." Meanwhile, in the hidden Titan shipyards beyond Neptune, Admiral Somin watched the construction of humanity's second secret weapon. The Unconquerable was nearing completion, its hull almost identical to the Indomitable, but equipped with even more advanced systems. Chief Engineer Yunbi had returned from the Indomitable's mission with valuable combat data. The gravity cannon had performed perfectly, but the power requirements were enormous. The ship could fire perhaps a dozen shots at full power, before needing to return to base for recharging. "The second ship will have improved power systems," Yunbi reported to Admiral Somin. "We've increased the fusion reactor output by 30% and added backup power cells. The Unconquerable will be able to fire 20 full-power shots in a single engagement. And the third ship? The Unstoppable is still under construction, but it will be different from the first two. Instead of a single massive gravity cannon, it will carry multiple smaller gravitational weapons, more shots but less individual power." Admiral Somin nodded with satisfaction. 3 ships with different capabilities would give humanity tactical flexibility that no enemy could predict. But more importantly, they represented proof that human technology could continue to advance and improve. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "priority message from Earth Command. President Jiwan wants to speak with you immediately." The transmission was encrypted with the highest security protocols. President Jiwan's face appeared on the screen, showing the strain of the past few days. "Admiral, what is the status of our fleet?" "Madam President, the Indomitable performed perfectly. Captain Dae-sung's crew handled their first combat mission with distinction. The second ship will be ready for deployment within 2 weeks. And galactic reaction? Exactly as predicted. The Helix Nebula had been chosen as the perfect battlefield for what many believed would be the most important military engagement in galactic history. The massive cloud of ionized gas provided natural cover for ship movements, while its electromagnetic properties would interfere with long-range sensors. It was here that the combined forces of 5 major galactic powers had assembled to face humanity's ultimate test. War Marshal Grixtor stood on the bridge of his new flagship, watching the tactical displays that showed the largest fleet ever assembled in known space. Over 800 ships hung in formation throughout the nebula, representing the military might of the Cortex Empire, Forthak Republic, Chitauri Confederation, Nexus Alliance, and even the normally peaceful Etherian Commonwealth. Status report, he commanded. All fleets report ready for engagement. His tactical officer replied. The Vorthak Grand Fleet holds the center position with 200 ships. The Chitauri Rapid Response Forces are positioned on the flanks with 150 vessels each. Our own forces comprise 100 ships, while the Etherian and Nexus fleets provide support elements. Grixtor nodded with grim satisfaction. After the humiliation at Haven, the Cortex Empire had convinced the other major powers that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic civilization. A species that could develop such devastating weapons in secret could not be allowed to continue their expansion unchecked. And the human ship? Long-range sensors detect a single vessel approaching the nebula. Same energy signature as the ship that destroyed Admiral Veltar's fleet. Only one ship? Grixtor could hardly believe it. Intelligence suggested they might have built others by now. Our spies report continued construction activity in human space, but no additional ships have been detected leaving their home system. War Marshal Grixtor allowed himself a moment of fierce pride. His strategy had worked. By assembling this massive force so quickly, they had forced humanity to respond before their additional ships were ready. The Indomitable would face impossible odds, and even the most advanced technology had limits. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Dae-sung studied the tactical situation with his senior staff. The enemy fleet was spread throughout the nebula in a complex formation, designed to attack from multiple directions simultaneously. It was an impressive display of coordination between species that normally competed with each other. 800 ships, Navigator Wu Jin said quietly. That's 4 times larger than the Cortex fleet at Haven. And they're not going to panic and scatter when we destroy their flagship, Weapons Officer Hai Jin added. These are professional military forces from multiple species. They'll maintain discipline under fire. Captain Dae-sung nodded thoughtfully. The crew of the Indomitable had trained extensively for scenarios involving overwhelming enemy numbers, but 800 ships was beyond anything they had practiced for. Chief Engineer, what is our status on the gravity cannon? Yunbi consulted her displays. Fully charged and ready for combat. We have 14 full-power shots available before we need to begin power conservation measures. 14 shots against 800 ships, Communications Officer Sujin observed. That means each shot needs to eliminate more than 50 enemy vessels to clear the field. The gravity cannon has a limited area of effect, Captain Dae-sung said. We cannot destroy 50 ships with a single shot unless they cooperate by clustering together. Sir, Security Chief Min-ho interrupted. Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet. Put it through. War Marshal Grixtor's scarred face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity as his crew prepared for the coming battle. Captain Dae-sung, Grixtor said, his voice filled with confident aggression. I am War Marshal Grixtor of the Cortex Empire, commanding the Combined Galactic Defense Force. You are ordered to surrender your vessel immediately. War Marshal, Captain Dae-sung replied calmly, you are in violation of galactic law by assembling an armed fleet in neutral space. Withdraw your forces immediately. Grixtor laughed, a harsh sound that spoke of violence and conquest. Captain, you destroyed a Cortex battle fleet and threatened the stability of galactic civilization. Your species has revealed technology that poses a danger to all peaceful worlds. This fleet has been assembled to contain that threat. By destroying a single ship that was protecting human civilians? By eliminating a weapon that could be used to conquer the galaxy, Grixtor replied. Humanity will surrender the technology used in your gravity weapon, submit to inspection of all military facilities, and accept limitations on future ship construction. Refuse, and you will be destroyed. Captain Dae-sung was quiet for a moment, considering the ultimatum. Around him, his crew waited for his response. In the depths of the ship, 500 human men and women prepared for a battle that would determine their species' future among the stars. War Marshal Grixtor, Captain Dae-sung said finally, humanity rejects your ultimatum. We will not surrender our defensive capabilities to species that threaten our civilians. If you wish to attack us, proceed. But understand that you do so at your own risk. Captain, you are outnumbered 800 to 1. No single ship, regardless of its capabilities, can survive those odds. Captain Dae-sung smiled slightly. War Marshal, you are about to learn why humans have survived and thrived on a world that has tried to kill us for millions of years. We do not surrender when faced with impossible odds. We adapt, we overcome, and we win. The transmission ended, and Captain Dae-sung turned to his crew. All hands battle stations. This is not going to be like Haven. The enemy will not panic, they will not scatter, and they will not give up easily. We need to be better than we have ever been. The battle began with a coordinated assault from 6 directions simultaneously. The combined Galactic Defense Force had learned from the Cortex failure at Haven. Instead of concentrating their fire on the Indomitable from a single vector, they spread their attack to force the human ship to divide its defensive attention. Over 2,000 weapons fired at once. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and gravitational disruptors converged on the Indomitable's position from every direction. The space around the human ship became a storm of destructive energy that would have obliterated any known vessel. The Indomitable absorbed the attack without visible damage. Its quantum armor held against the impossible barrage, dispersing energy that could have cracked a moon. But Captain Dae-sung knew that the armor had limits and the enemy had enough firepower to eventually overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. "Return fire," he ordered. "Target the Vorthak command ship." The gravity cannon fired with its characteristic space-bending distortion. The massive Vorthak dreadnought that served as fleet command collapsed into itself and disappeared in a burst of released energy. But before the explosion had even faded, the enemy fleet was already adapting to the loss. Secondary command ship taking over fleet coordination. Tactical Officer Yeon-soo reported, "Enemy formations are spreading out to minimize the effectiveness of our gravity weapon." Captain Dae-sung nodded grimly. These were not inexperienced pirates or overconfident raiders. These were professional military forces led by officers who understood tactics and adaptation. They would not make the same mistakes twice. The Indomitable began to move through the nebula at speeds that defied physics, as the galaxy understood them. The ship's unique propulsion system allowed it to change direction and velocity in ways that made targeting difficult for the enemy fleet. But 800 ships could cover a lot of space, and escape was not the objective. "Target cluster of Chitauri vessels. Bearing 27 Mark IV, Captain Dae-sung ordered. The gravity cannon fired again, destroying 3 ships that had been maneuvering too close together. The explosion created a brief opening in the enemy formation, but it closed quickly as other ships moved to fill the gap. For the next hour, the battle raged throughout the Helix Nebula. The Indomitable darted between enemy formations like a predator hunting in a pack, firing its devastating weapon whenever targets presented themselves. Each shot destroyed 1 or more enemy ships, but the fleet was too large and too spread out for quick elimination. "Gravity cannon charge at 60%. Chief Engineer Yoon-bi reported. "We fired 9 full-power shots. 5 more before we need to consider power conservation." Captain Dae-sung studied his tactical displays. The enemy fleet still numbered over 700 ships despite their losses. At this rate, the Indomitable would exhaust its power reserves long before clearing the field. "Captain," Communications Officer Soo-jin called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command." "Put it through," Captain Dae-sung ordered, expecting to hear from Admiral So-min or President Ji-won. Instead, a familiar voice filled the bridge. "Captain Dae-sung, this is Captain Jin-woo of the Unconquerable. Sorry, we're late to the party." The main screen showed a second massive ship emerging from fold space at the edge of the nebula. The Unconquerable was nearly identical to the Indomitable, but Captain Dae-sung could see subtle differences in the hull configuration that indicated improved systems. "Captain Jin-woo, you are a welcome sight," Dae-sung replied. "What is your status?" "All systems operational and ready for combat. We also brought a friend, a third ship.